If AI is the tsunami, how do we make it a humanity or an empathy accelerator and not a hindrance?
I think you're right on that. And I think it's a theme that I've been playing in social and in my thought leadership. Agonize or organize? What are we going to build? And that's what I've done over the years. I remember very distinctly when social media was getting going. It was the beginning of the Weiss Center in Syracuse. We had a lecture. We talked about the proliferation of it, what it could mean. And I said, look, social media, had it been available during the Holocaust, would we have been more aware and more empathetic to what had happened? And could we have intervened sooner and saved more lives? So I brought up that example, and I think people could feel it and understand it. And I'm sure there's a million other examples I could use. And I think Tina said it today, we don't know what's coming next. I love the unexpected happening. And that's the curiosity point she was talking about. This is the kind of podcast that if you really want to begin to think like an innovator, an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, and what's possible, I think this is a good one to listen to. And adversity can be turned into opportunity.
It's about finding the magic. It's about finding that effervescent something.
Empower. Yep. Hi, Tina.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's a bit of a miracle that you're here with us. When we started talking about the podcast, nothing you've gone through had happened yet. So I feel like we got to start by diving into your roller coaster summer.
My roller coaster summer was a life-changing inflection point for me. So where would you like me to start?
Well, you were diagnosed with a brain tumor.
That's the big reveal. Let me go back.
I know, but it's one of the things we want to talk about here is survival, thrival. It's an appropriate time to have the conversation, although it probably won't air till after. But, I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of my wife's death. So everybody's going through something, but I always feel like what this podcast can do is help people kind of cope with that, find ways to cope. How do you get through these tough things? And when I heard the story, which was, of course, a huge shock to me because I didn't even know it happened. And when I saw you, you seemed pretty like you hadn't gone through that. And then you just laid it on me. So lay it on us.
Okay. Well, so let's go backwards to go forwards, because I think what you're doing, first of all, in terms of educating people on how do we live our best lives, educating people on being in the driver's seat of their own healthcare and owning that, and educating people on how do we sort of have that journey mindset and what does it mean to lift? What does it mean to continue? What does it mean to be here? And how do we do that in a way with grace and beauty and connection? So thank you for even doing this work. It's really remarkable, and you're remarkable. So, okay, let's set the stage. It's May, professor at USC, and my students were graduating on Friday, May, I think 17th. Yep. And so I administered my finals on Monday. I flew back to Mill Valley. Around Wednesday, I started to have a headache. Things to know about me: I'm not a catastrophizer and I'm not a hypochondriac, but I take really good care of my health. But those are important data points. So I have a headache. I think, this is annoying, but I fly back and forth all the time. So it's not that. Maybe I have COVID. The only reason I cared about having COVID was because I didn't want to go to graduation and, spread the virus. So I'm taking COVID tests every day. I feel like, well, maybe this is a new COVID strand that gives you a headache right here. I don't know. Failed the COVID test. Okay, fine. Now it's Wednesday, I have a headache. Thursday, I have a headache. Friday, I get up at 5 a.m. I get on a 6 a.m. flight to go walk in graduation as a professor. Jimmy Iovine, Dr. Dre, they're all there. My academy, Lorraine Powell Jobs is giving the keynote. And the thing I'm most excited about is to have lunch with my students' parents, because I'm very close to many of my students. They're my entrepreneurs. They're my legacy. And I can't see straight. I mean, I can see perfectly, but I'm just not myself. At the airport at 6 a.m., I happen to be a member of One Medical. And I'm like, I got a really bad seat on Southwest, which was a sign that something was wrong. I didn't check in early enough. So I decide to see if I can get a video conference while standing on line. I get on the video conference. The woman says to me, sounds like you're dehydrated, or maybe you have a virus. When you land, why don't you grab a Gatorade or a coconut water and go to your thing and you see how you feel. And if you don't feel great, you should probably come in and see us. go to the graduation, feel like crap, get through it, fly back home, still feel terrible, wake up on Saturday, still have this headache.
Jesus.
I make an appointment with One Medical to go see somebody in person. I go to see the guy in person and I said, look, I have a virus, but I just want to check. And he does the checking. He's like, you seem fine. All is good. You probably have a virus and you'll be fine. But maybe you should get a scan if you're not feeling better. I want to see you on Monday on video just to like check you out. Now, Monday, wake up, feel really crappy, call the doctor. And he says, I don't think Advil and Tylenol is working for you. Why don't I give you Vicodin? I was like, ooh, dude, that's like heavy stuff. I take the Vicodin. My head within 20 minutes feels like it's exploding. I say to my partners, I need to go to the emergency room to have my stomach pumped because I'm having an allergic reaction to Vicodin. Long story short, I get to the emergency room, I start throwing up, and I say to them, you know what? I already pumped my stomach. But while I'm here, do you have a scan available? I figure, I'll be out of here in 15 minutes. They're like, yeah, sure, we can have a scan. I get a scan. The doctor comes in and he says, I got to tell you something. That was quite a scan. You have an inoperable brain tumor. And I started hysterical laughing because I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. A what? And so I said, these bracelets you put on me, why don't you check and match the film? Because I have a virus. In fact, I'm feeling a little sweaty. The virus is coming out. We're good. He's like, would you like to see the scan? It has your name on it. So I'm like, this is fascinating. So the first thing I think of is I have a very dear friend, David Crane, and I knew that he was very connected to the brain surgery squad at UCSF. And I said, I'm out of here. Let's figure this out. The surgeon comes in. He's not the guy who told me I had an inoperable brain tumor. Dr. Aurora comes in. He's like, I'm a UCSF brain surgeon. I happen to be on call. I'm getting you to UCSF. I'm like, okay, great. We get in the ambulance. And next thing I know, I'm in UCSF. They give me an MRI. And Dr. Aurora comes out. It's the middle of the night at this point. Phone calls have been made. Sisters are getting on planes. Sons are being notified. Friends are starting to show up at the emergency room with food because, of course, I made some requests. I felt fine other than the headache. I go to the MRI and they say, it's not the brain tumor we thought it was, but you basically have a large avocado in the back of your head. It's called a meningioma, and we're not doing surgery tomorrow morning. We're going to slow everything down. We have a protocol here. We are the universal headquarters for meningiomas. So put that in the back of your pocket. If I had called you and you said, Tina, here's a private plane, here's an open ticket, I'm sending you wherever you need to go, you would have sent me to UCSF to the meningioma, not Dubai, not Geneva, not New York, not Stanford, there. I am not afraid. I'm just feeling the love and it's going to be fine. Next thing I know, girlfriends are showing up at the hospital wearing birthday tiaras because they know I love a good birthday tiara. And we start a protocol. 2 weeks later, they've shrunken it to the place where they want to operate.
Interesting. And you mentioned fear, and I just want to make sure you work this into the discussion. You talk about fear being a wasted emotion, which it sounds like you're talking through here, but I think it's worth talking about why fear is a possible wasted emotion.
So there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And basically the thesis of that book is if you're like in the savannah and there's a bunch of lions that are about to eat you, like you should run as fast as you can. Like fear is really good. It tells you when danger lurks. Don't put your hand in fire. Hopefully you instill fear with your children when crossing intersections. Like that's the time to be shrill and to have fear because we need to teach that. But fear equals survival in those situations where it's get hit by a car, burn your hand, get eaten by a lion. Fear's good. In all other cases, it's just anxiety producing. And so in that ambulance, from the time I didn't know it was inoperable to the time I got to UCSF, I decided that the reframe was what I needed to do and that I have so much love and I am so gifted with such extraordinary community and extraordinary privilege in my career, in my brain, in my community, in my faith, in my soul, that fear equals love. So anytime I felt fear, I decided to replace it with love. And that is probably who I've always been. But ironically, I'm not a fearless person. Like, I'm not bungee jumping with you. I'm not whitewater rafting with you. I will like cheer you on. but that's not my jam. Having said that, here I was. And the thing I was most fearful from at that moment was all the IVs, because I have really skinny arms and not great veins. So I was like, oh my God, they have to stick all this stuff in me.
Yeah, Audra had the same issue. I remember that.
So I was like, okay, that is going to be the protocol for the next 2 weeks. I have to fall in love with IVs. It's got to be like the thing that is the best thing in my life. And so I just decided that this was going to be my mindset, and it was going to be my mindset for the rest of my life. I also decided that I was going to trust the scientists. These were the best people in the world. As a CEO and a leader, I always like to surround myself with people smarter than me. And these guys were the best. And that I had my own pathway, and that pathway was light. And I was going to pull light into the area where they told me I had the tumor. And I was just going to meditate on flushing my head with refracted light, because I believe in rainbows, but not rainbows like as stickers or graphics, although those are fun too. I believe, and I've always believed, that the colors we see tell our brains very important things. And there's a lot of science to back this up. And there's white papers that are being written now that our neural circuits deep in the brain respond to different colors.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that more. So yeah, I know this is true. And it's obviously why I like going to music with all of that. You know, you called this stage of your life the becoming. Is that what some of this is? What does all that mean? Where'd that come from?
When I was a little girl, we all had fears, right? You saw a monster in your room because it was a shadow coming out of your window and you didn't know, and you weren't sure if you should get out of bed and find your parents or just live through it. Monsters, Inc. was based on that. And actually, Monsters, Inc., to double click on that, if you remember how that movie ended, it started with scaring the kids to capture the screams, to create the energy. And it ended with making the kids laugh. And that turned out to have better energy than the fear. And so rainbows, when I was a little girl, do you remember the red balloon, that French movie with the little boy? I loved that image. And so I changed that image to rainbow balloons, not red balloons. And whenever I felt fearful in my bedroom or anywhere, I would just be lifted up by those balloons and taken away.
Wow.
And that was like my happy place. And then when my children were born, I have 2 sons, and I'm a girly girl with sisters and girl cousins and strong women. So I didn't know from raising little boys. I never had little boys around me. I decided to tell them stories, and I invented this superhero named Rainbow Girl, because I'd always known that rainbows were my superpower. And she shoots rainbows from her wrists, and we would like find the bad guys and wrap them up and throw them into outer space. And when we pulled them back, they were good guys. I always knew that rainbows were my superpower, not in the sense of the graphics, but in the sense of what is the role and relationship of color and light and possibilities, that you can see things that may or may not actually be there, because we know when sun goes through refracted light, it creates this rainbow experience that may or may not be there, but I chose to believe that it is. And I chose to believe that that was consciousness. And I really, at the hospital, I just decided that I was going to tap into the energy that was all around me. Happiness is not something I really believe in, because happiness is that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. But you can't be happy all the time. Life is hard. And life has moments of joy. And when they present themselves, they're delicious, and we have to savor them, because there's another challenge around the corner. And then there's joy. And then there's challenge. And then there's opportunity. And then there's...
No, I bonded with you on this concept that, you know, people have actually wondered how they see me on the internet going everywhere, doing everything, but having that joy. And I think we run toward the light. So take us back just a second and tell us how it resolved, like how you got through that.
Yeah, so we had the vascular surgery first. And this one, it makes me want to be a doctor, because they went through my groin to get to my brain, which I just thought was like, that's a nonstop flight, really?
Yeah, med devices have come a long way. baby.
Amazing.
Anyway.
And so they were all cheering like they had just won the their division championship and were going to the Super Bowl because they got the feeder. And they didn't know they would get it because they couldn't really see it on the scan, but they got in there, they got it, they cauterized it, and it was gone. I was convinced that I helped create those conditions because I had been pulling light through my head, and it never even dawned on me that I might have cancer. I just thought somehow this avocado landed in my head and we were going to make it toast. Like, I'm going
Right.
to make these rainbows. If this thing is not a happy place, it's coming out. And if it's not a happy one, meaning it's malignant, I'm going to turn it into something not. The next day, they did a 9 or 10-hour surgery and they opened me up. And Dr. Aurora, who I love so much, was the last person to talk to me. And as I was rolling into the surgery down the hall with my sisters and Steven and sons, I was telling them research I wanted them to conduct. And they were like, can we talk about this tomorrow? Like, look, I really think there's something with this rainbow light. Can we set up a lab? They were like, we can talk labs tomorrow. Okay, fine. So then his last comment to me before he put on the mask for the anesthesia was, there anything else you want to say? And I said, well, there's a few things. Glad you asked. Number one, I love you. I love you for choosing this profession. I love you for coming into my life. And I love you for your mastery because you're an extraordinary human. And number two, this is going to be like the easiest surgery you've ever done, just in case you were worried. And number three, don't touch the weave. He said, Tina, number one, I love you too so much. Number two, we got this. Number three, no promises.
No promises on the weave.
And then UCSF has a special pathology protocol
Yes.
called UCSF 500.
Yeah.
And that came back. And it's no cancer, no radiology, no chemotherapy. It's 100% gone. And I will be part of a protocol testing, scanning, I think every 6 months and then every year thereafter. The first scan that I had, it's clean as a whistle.
Do these come back?
They might. And one thing, because people who care about the medical data in your podcast, not to be the canary in the coal mine here, because there hasn't been clinicals on it yet, but hopefully there will be soon, is women are exponentially more likely to get meningiomas, and HRT is something they love to feed off of. And so I'm off of HRT. There's been a boom in HRT, and there's many positive things about HRT.
Well, right. And I've had lots of people on the podcast talking about it.
And they've debunked a lot of the data that came out in the 80s. So women are running to get it. I was one of those people. Estrogen is an amazing hormone, and taking it with progesterone can have really amazing effects on your brain acuity, your sexual functioning, your bone strength. I mean, it's just got a lot of good things in there, but it is a feeder. And so that is just a fact.
Is there a book in the future around this? Especially, I was even thinking, is there a children's book in the works when I hear the stories about Rainbow Girl? Have you thought about that?
So the book, or the idea that I'm working on, is really about this idea that sparks with soul. I believe that, we have 5 senses that we know about, but there's a 6th sense. And I believe that 6th sense is our soul. And for us as humans, really thought about taking care of our soul as our 6th sense. Because I believe our souls live inside of our bodies, but I believe they live outside of our bodies as well. And for your wife, like, her soul is vibrant in here right now because she's transitioned, but she's here. And so her consciousness, all of our consciousness is connected, and our soul is connected. And so this concept of our soul being our 6th sense, what does enlightened leadership mean? How do you replace fear with love? And how do we think about that in business, in interpersonal relationships, in leadership, in community? So I don't know. In terms of Rainbow Girl, sure. I love Rainbow Girl.
Did the experience with the brain tumor spark all of the spark, or was that something already in the works?
That was something already in the works, because That's who I am. And that's how I lead. I lead with intention. I think that what we do is not who we are. And I think we need to see each other in that way. And I also think we need to understand the golden rule that our moms taught us, treat others as you want to be treated, is actually not the golden rule. The golden rule is to treat others as they want to be treated. Because what works for you, Jim, or me, Tina, doesn't necessarily work for John, Mary, or Joe. We're in what I would call right now the relationship economy because we're having direct relationships. You're starting a podcast 10, 20 years ago when you started your journey in your career. You were not doing a podcast and there wasn't YouTube. And now you can have direct relationships. So the roles have changed. It's important to you that your companies are seen to be thriving and good cultures, and you want to retain people and attract people, and you want to create a great culture because that's what your company is made up of, the talent that works with you. And so in the relationship economy, we have to think about what is the language of relationships and how does that apply to business? And so empathy is really, I think, the only thing that scales.
Yeah. We're way on the same page. I mean, that's how I built my company. We're coming up on the 25th anniversary, so I hear you. But look, I love a great origin story. Now, you mentioned moms, and my mom was a CEO and a teacher, and, I learned a ton from her. But your mom was president of Perry Ellis at a time when few women led companies. Where'd she go to college?
Well, she started at Syracuse.
Another connector.
But then she left to get her MRS with my dad and raised her 3 daughters. I'm the youngest of 3. I have 2 extraordinary older sisters. We are #Sharkey sisters, and they are my everything. And then she went to work.
It's like the Schuyler sisters from Hamilton.
Exactly. She went to work when I was in middle school, although she'd always done amazing creative projects, fundraising, selling jewelry, finding amazing designers in Soho when Soho was really about artists. And then she quickly left working with my dad and got a corporate apparel leadership role and worked her way up from Tahari to Perry Ellis to Anne Klein. And she was a president for a public company called Manhattan Industries that Larry Leeds ran. My parents at that point were divorced. My sisters were out of the house. My mom and I were like roommates in Manhattan. I was going to Stuyvesant High School and she was working up on 7th Avenue and 41st or 39th. And she said if my homework was done, I could sit in any meeting that the leader said I could and only speak when spoken to. And so I grew up around strong women. I didn't know that women in leadership roles were not a thing because you know what you see. And what I saw was a strong mom, strong women on her team. She didn't only have women there, but there were a lot of leaders that were there. Her head creative directors, her head of merchandising, her head of sales, they were all women. My first job out of college, I got a job, as a showroom salesperson because I knew I had to start somewhere, but I wasn't happy. I went to University of Pennsylvania and I was used to deep intellectual engagement. I had just done an entrepreneurial management class at Wharton where I was writing business plans and doing all kinds of things. And so my mom said she would make some informational interviews for me to meet people and just see what leadership roles look like. So I had a 15-minute appointment with, at the time, Mr. Tomio Taki. He was a Japanese shogun and he owned Anne Klein and Perry Ellis and Donna Karan and many other things. Behind him was a stack of what looked like Hollywood scripts, meaning like you could see the spines. And I was just staring at them thinking, I wonder if he's like a film producer or something. And one of them looked like the business plan I had just co-authored with some Philadelphia entrepreneurs that we were assigned to in our class. And I said, may I ask a question before we start? May I see that plan? And I pointed to this spine. I said, is that the Philadelphia vending company? And he said, yes. How do you know that? And I said, well, I co-authored the plan. And if I were you, I would really take a deep dive because there are patent issues.
Wow.
So the next day he introduced me to his business partner. They were like angel investors and they also had invested in HDTV because Mr. Taki was friends with the Morita family in Japan and the Morita family owned Sony and they were inventing HDTV equipment and they wanted to bring it into the States. After meeting the partner, I left fashion, went into technology and never turned back. 2 years later, I was lobbying Congress on the HDTV task force. I was the youngest woman and probably one of the only women working with the NAB.
It's wild how stuff happens. Could you even think then how your career would evolve the way it did?
I mean, I was on the AV squad in third grade.
Right. Okay.
Here's what I tell my students, and here's what I tell people I mentor, and what I would want to tell your audience is that number one, you only make the shots you take. Number two, if you are a Harry Potter fan, of which I am, there's a room of requirement doors, and there's nothing wrong with knocking on them. Worst case is there's nothing behind them. But if you're gracious and you're humble, it's okay to make the advance. It's okay to ask the question. Maybe if my mom hadn't told me that early, she used to always say, tell them who you are. And I was like, who am I? And she said, you're Tina Sharkey. So I've used that confidence, that humility, that graciousness that I was taught to make the advance. And I'd say that that has been the biggest driver in my career.
So you're a trend spotter. I mean, in the 90s, you bought socialmedia.com before social media was social media. How does someone build an instinct for what's next?
I think that number one, be curious. Number two, ask questions. I remember like shopping with my mom, not necessarily for us, although we love to shop. Retail therapy is a thing. She would always touch the fabric. My dad did this too. And then they would always ask the salespeople, and I still do this to this day. What are your best sellers? What's trending? What type of customers come in here? And you would think there was like a reason that I was asking those questions. I did it as a kid. I just wanted to know. It's not about me. It's about what consumers think, what enterprise thinks. Where's the love? And so having a pulse on that has always been a curiosity. I'm also, I think, a great storyteller. And so in business, I think that CEOs, and maybe you'll agree with me, you're the chief storytelling officer. As a result, I've always had to create ways to communicate to all different kinds of stakeholders. And so when I coined social media, I wasn't like in a lab thinking about it. I had co-founded iVillage, which ended up being the largest community for women online. We were trying to explain to advertisers, and you'll relate to this. We have service media, we have transactional media, we have news media, we have entertainment media, but there's this new form of media that we also have, and it'll probably be our most powerful one, and that's social media. Meaning we have chat rooms, we have message boards, we have engagement where the people want to talk to each other.
It's two-way, yeah.
And so advertisers were very uncomfortable being around conversations they couldn't control. You know that. You represent.
I remember that, yeah. Especially in healthcare, yeah.
Especially in healthcare. And we were doing, lots of healthcare stuff, helping people understand the power of story, the power of possibility, the power of innovation. I'm a professor now at USC, at the Ivy and Young Academy. And really, what I'm teaching my students, besides disruptive innovation and entrepreneurship and modern brand and community playbooks, is the power of story. People remember story more than they remember data. So how do you tell stories?
Talk more about the USC program. You teach courses and work on the Gen AI built on the idea of empathy scales. So I wanted to get into that because one of the things you're talking about in storytelling, and I did it as I built a company, I call it contextualization and getting people aligned. I mean, I did this as a student council president. How do you get people to do things that they don't think they can do or wouldn't otherwise do, but create a mission, a collective mission? And, the empathy scales plays a role in that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you fit that in, as we got to talk about AI, right? Where is it? Where is it going? We're just at the beginning of it. You were at the beginning of social. I was at the beginning of social. We see where that's gone and how fast. So I think it's worth talking to the audience about that. Where does technology play a role? Where does the human part have to come in?
Yeah. So I love all of that. And that's we could talk for weeks.
We might. There's always a part two.
Okay. So now that we're in the age of AI and we talk about humanity, you could have a dystopian view of it. You could say that the machines are going to run the world and that we're totally screwed. But I choose to believe in love. I choose to believe in what makes us divinely human is that moat around the machines. The more we understand what is our divine humanity and our empathy, then we scale that and we use the machines to help us disrupt and accelerate the possible. I think that the disruptions and innovations we're going to see in healthcare
Well, they're already here.
already here, and we're not even in the first inning. So if social media was a tidal wave, this is a tsunami.
Right. Can you teach empathy?
I think that many people are born with it, and those have the highest EQ, and they really have the emotional intelligence to read other people. But what I told my kids from the time they could remember, and in the hospital when I was trying to get them to understand my ethical will, because the will is just paper and lawyers, but my ethical will is remembering that always assume best intentions, treat others as they want to be treated, meet people where they are, be curious, ask questions, solve problems, and know that service is a divinely selfish act. And so keep doing it, because as good as it is to do it for the ones you're serving, it's even better for you.
It's better for you. Yeah.
Life is hard, but if you want to develop yourself, then you have to work at it and you have to set that intention and make time for it. We spend so much time doing strat planning and analysis and work and goals and everything outside of ourselves, but doing your own work is really important. And there's no time like the present for that. And I think that a lot of people are seeking out new modalities to do it, whether that's plant-based medicine, whether that's offsites where you're going intensives. But every day I write in this, which is the 5-minute journal. It takes me 3 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes right before bed. And it's a small act of just being anchored in my gratitude, of saying what I'm looking forward to and talking about what I learned and what were the highlights of my day. And it takes 5 minutes. But I think it is a sense of grounding yourself, not just being caught up in what you do, but remembering who you are.
Well, we started on the concept of fear. Do you feel more fearless than you ever did before?
I think that it's not about being fearless. It's about accepting life on life's terms and noticing what shows up and being open to embracing that. And if what you want to show up isn't there yet, ask for it. Ask the universe. Set the intention. Put it out there in the world. And so, am I afraid? No. But do I know what it looks like around the corner? No. But I'm falling forward.
We're going to drop the mic on that. Well, definitely, I see a part 2 in our future here. But, what's the best vacation you've ever taken?
That's a hard one to answer. So I'll just share what popped into my mind. A couple of years ago with Sid, I went to Alaska on a retreat. But because I was in Alaska, I added to that trip and I took a seaplane to this place called Katmai Falls. And I watched, it's this tiny island that has 1,000 bears on it. And it was in the summer. And there's waterfalls and the salmon are literally jumping. I kid you not,
cool.
Out of the waterfall.
Yeah, I've seen video of that.
Oh my God, I was there. The energy and the power of seeing how nature really works was really majestic and
so
fantastic.
Cool. Amazing. So what album would be or is the soundtrack of your life?
Love that question. Definitely. Sting and I, we go way back. And so he definitely is the chronicler of my life. But I've recently discovered a new musician who I think is one of the greatest musicians of our time. Do you know Jacob Collier?
I don't. No.
Oh my gosh. We're going to go offline on this and I'm going to expose you to someone who will blow your mind.
Good. I can't wait. Finally, just before we go, what's something you're trying to get real? Obviously, that's the podcast. Get real honest about.
I'd say I'm trying to get really honest about what this next chapter in my life looks like. And I'm just at the beginning of figuring that out. And it's, there's no application. There's no recruiter. There's no board members. There's no venture capitalists. There's no reporting. It's all me. And my sons are now adulting in Chicago and New York. I have an incredible life partner. And I'm not sure where my commercial chapters are going to be. And I'm trying to sort that out. And it's a first for that because there's no ecosystem to support that other than me. And so who knows?
Awesome. Really great. Thanks for doing this. So glad you shared that well, it's really a thrival story. It's not a survival story. I'm just so glad we're getting to know each other, and you're part of this world. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me on the Get Real podcast. I hope you feel a little healthier hanging out with me. It's going to be a lot of fun passing this along to others. Please subscribe below. Please share. I'm excited not just to talk about healthcare, but a lot of other fun topics. It's about making healthy talk about healthcare. It's not a lecture. This is supposed to be fun, and look forward to spending more time with you in the future.